Alright, you guys enjoyed part 1, and today we are back for some more unpopular, bold championship predictions ahead of the new season. Once again, you guys have not disappointed in the comments down below. We're going to be reacting to some of my favourite ones from that last video. As always, if you do go to enjoy, make sure to drop a like. Without any further ado, let's jump in. Campaign's unpopular prediction for the new season is for Watford to keep their manager for the entire season. We thought they'd done it in the last campaign, keeping Cleverley, all but to sack him right at the end. Yeah, Paulo Pezzolano is an interesting appointment for Watford as well. Obviously, his first time managing in England. Watford do like going towards the foreign market when looking for both players and managers in seasons gone by. What you would say is the expectations from those behind the scenes definitely are quite high. One of the factors in terms of why Cleverley was sacked in the end was because the owners there think they should be competing for the top 6. Right now, I think they're a really hard one to call. Literally, I could see Watford being anywhere next season. Relegation battle, top 6 battle, it'll all come down to their recruitment at the end of the day. Another Watford one here from Ben. He says Watford will finish higher than last season in spite of all the justified love for Cleverley. I think that's an interesting take. Obviously, I think most would agree that Cleverley was quite harshly sacked at the end of last season, but it is worth pointing out that the drop-off that Watford experienced in the second half of the season was really sharp. Obviously, a lot's been made of Preston and their really poor end to last season, but statistically, Watford were even worse than North End in the second half of last season in terms of points on the board. So if they can get that out of their system going into the next campaign, then yeah, there is still every chance that they improve on last season's finish. The flip side of the coin for Watford, though, is this one from Sam. Genuinely believe Watford are the next decent-sized club in trouble. Parachute's gone, and a manager who hasn't managed in the Championship before, if it doesn't go right, can see them going down or at least being right in the mix. Yeah, to be honest, I think a lot of people thought that Watford would be in that situation last season, but then they started the campaign so well under Cleverley that they were just never dragged into that relegation scrap, despite the big tail off in the second half of the campaign. Definitely feels like there is a bit of pressure there, though, on the new manager to hit the ground running, especially with the ownership having lofty ambitions there. RF Ultra says, unpopular prediction, Wrexham will be this year's Portsmouth. Nick some wins against the big teams, but get hammered by others. And yeah, I don't hate that as a shout. One similarity that I could definitely see between Wrexham and Portsmouth next season is that I think that Wrexham will heavily lean on their home form. I don't think a lot of teams will enjoy going to the racecourse, and I think that Wrexham can really build that up into something next season. Get a good fierce atmosphere there. Obviously, they were brilliant there last season in League One. I mean, they've been brilliant at the racecourse for the last like 3 or 4 years now, but if they can keep those solid foundations and mix it in with a few decent results on the road as well, then you'd expect Wrexham to be fine next season. But like the comment suggests there, I could also see there being a few hammerings here and there as well. Lee says Swansea will be a surprise package next season. Feel like their early business is going under the radar. They'll continue the form in the back end of last season under Sheehan. And yeah, don't hate that shout. I saw a few suggestions that Swansea will be a bit of a dark horse next season. It definitely feels like there's good vibes going on around the club at the moment. Obviously, they've been quite proactive in the transfer window so far, picking up some good deals, particularly like that pickup of Cameron Burgess on a free transfer. I think that's a really smart investment. Sheehan obviously did fantastic in the back end of last season as well. From February onwards, Swansea were picking up points like a top 6 outfit. You know, they got 27 points in their last 17 games of last season, Swansea. The only reservation I have about Sheehan is long term, and it's probably not fair to judge him by this, but the sort of history of the Championship of assistant managers stepping into the managerial role, long term, that never tends to go that well. They always seem to get a good bounce initially, but once they hit a bit of a rocky patch, bad run of form, that's when things can start to unravel. So we'll wait and see if next season, when he no doubt does hit a bit of a rough patch of form, can he guide Swansea out of that? You know, when I think of assistant managers who have stepped up to a full managerial role in the Championship in years gone by, the first few that come to my head are the likes of Dean Holden at Bristol City, Frankie McAvoy at Preston, Omar Reza last season at Cardiff, Jason Tyndall at Bournemouth. They all had good starts, but just couldn't capture things long term. Let's wait and see if he can break that mould next season, though. Unpopular prediction, Birmingham not to make the playoffs and Wrexham to be bottom half. They'll find the Championship to be harder than they think. It definitely would be an unpopular prediction right now to probably predict Birmingham to finish outside of the top 6. With all the Championship predictions that I've seen so far, vast majority of them have got Blues in that top 6. 6. Now, that's probably not based on their current squad, but the potential and what they could invest in this summer. Same goes for Wrexham as well. Tough to make a definitive statement on either of them right now before we've got a few more weeks of this transfer window and they've started to get some really big deals in. This I thought was a very bold shout. Southampton will be in a relegation battle. Will Still will lose the confidence of his players. I do find it a bit annoying really that we have definitely reached that stage where regardless of what happens, the teams coming down from the Premier League are always going to be the favourites to win the Championship. And I know that we did get a bit of a curveball last season with the back-to-back relegations for Luton, but for a side like Southampton to be in the relegation battle next season, yeah, that would take a lot to go wrong, but definitely rate that as an unpopular shout. Ben also shares some of those opinions though. He says, I think it could be a tough year for the relegated sides. Leicester with a point deduction, Ipswich potentially losing McKenna, Southampton on the back of a terrible season and a reboot needed. Maybe no relegated sides to bounce straight back. Now that would be, just for the sake of the footballing ladder, I think really exciting. Obviously we are in this sort of yo-yo in nature at the moment between the same teams going up and down between Championship and Premier League. If we manage to have a full break of that where 3 completely new teams get promoted this season and then from the Premier League 3 completely new teams get relegated, yeah, that would seriously mix things up in the football and ladder, but the likelihood of that happening is pretty slim. Owen says, how have the bookies got us, Oxford, to finish bottom, let alone be relegated? We should finish mid-table. Yeah, there's definitely potential there for Oxford to kick on from last season. Obviously, a really good and steady pair of hands in the Championship, managing them now in Gary Rowett. I think it's a good, solid group of players as well. My only concern for Oxford would be, let's say that a Tyler Goodrum gets sold or someone like that, and then you struggle to replace that quality. Another thing I would flag up with Oxford, well, I thought they were really competitive last season. There were a few underlying stats which I think they'll want to improve going into next season. So in terms of chance creation, XG, Oxford were 23rd in the league, only Plymouth worse. And in terms of chances against, only Portsmouth, Stoke and Plymouth faced a higher XG than Oxford did last season. So those underlying stats do tend to catch up with you in the long run, and they'll all be things that Rowett will have on his mind and ways to improve going into next season. And there seems to be quite a bit of optimism in the air for Oxford. Another one here, unpopular opinion, Oxford won't finish bottom. In fact, they will better their 17th place finish next season. What I would say about Oxford is I thought they absolutely smashed it out the park with their recruitment last time around, and they're going to have a similarly great transfer window this time. As of recording, it's all been fairly quiet so far on the transfer front, but obviously still a long way to go. George Knight says, I think Leicester do a Sunderland and Luton. Point deduction, there's too much dead weight in the squad and they need a hard reset. Don't see them doing well in the slightest. Relegation could be on the cards for them. Yeah, I definitely think it's fair to say that Leicester don't have the same sort of fear factor for a lot of other Championship clubs that they had when they were last relegated. I think, last time they were in the Championship with Enzo Maresca, kept hold of a lot of that Premier League squad. I think everyone fancied them to be the runaway leaders of that league, and in the end they were just that really. But this time around, with all the issues they're facing off the pitch, it is going to be substantially harder for them, albeit I think I'd probably still have them predicted to finish in the top 6 even with a point deduction right now. Let's not forget Sheffield United, albeit we're only working with a 2-point deduction last season, but they were absolutely clear of everyone else, other than the 2 automatic promotion sides. So let's wait and see what the quality of that starting 11's looking like come the first day of the season, because there's no doubt going to be a lot of change there between now and then. Nigel says, I think Lampard could take Coventry to the Premier League through the autos this season with just 1 or 2 good signings, and definitely a opinion that I'm here for at the moment. I think Coventry are definitely going to be in that promotion mix next season. Statistically, they were really good under Lampard. They obviously made up for that bad start under Robbins last season. But Lampard in the Championship with Coventry so far has averaged 1.79 points per game. When projected over an entire season, that's worth about 82 points. So does have you in that automatic promotion territory. Norwich News says, maybe not promoted, but I do think Norwich will do well. Mainly the fact that we have a lot of money to play with towards Liam Manning's project. Yeah, I definitely agree that there is a lot of potential there with Norwich. I think that last season was a big underperformance. They've been fairly sensible in the market so far. Certainly like the addition of Harry Darling on a free transfer. Listen, there are going to be sales there, but I think after last season, quite a bit of that squad is in need of a bit of a refresh, and I think that Norwich will get that this season. Tyler says, Wrexham to be in the relegation zone in January, Disney Plus to spend 40 million on new players, then they survive on the last day. That is something worth taking into consideration with with any Wrexham predictions going into this new campaign, because if they are in a scenario where we get to January, let's say they're in the bottom 5, I'm in absolutely no doubt that they definitely go and drop a sizable amount of money to push them towards safety. Or on the flip side of that, if they're bobbing about in mid-table and they've even got a sniff of getting into the playoffs in January, I could really see them going full guns for that then as well. So yeah, let's wait and see what Wrexham do in this summer transfer window, but January could be a big one for them as well. Harry says Blackburn to be in a promotion fight and Alex Neil to become the Southampton manager when Will Still is sacked at Christmas. That Alex Neil shout is a rogue one, but I quite like that. The Blackburn shout is an interesting one. I've not really heard that many people discussing Blackburn too much of late. Transfer activity has all been fairly quiet as of recent, but I think this is a side that caught a lot of people by surprise last season. Vast majority of people were tipping Blackburn to struggle last time around, but they started the campaign so well, obviously under John Eustace, that they were in a top 6 battle for all of the campaign, weren't they? I do think in terms of the relative quality of that squad compared to where they finished, I do think that last season was a bit of an overperformance, but in saying that, it is a solid group of players. I think defensively they're fairly sound. They don't tend to concede that many chances. Listen, they're not going to spend a fortune this summer, are they? But if they can get that recruitment right on a budget, then yeah, Blackburn could definitely be there or thereabouts again. Finn says, my bold prediction at the moment would be that Stoke will go down, possibly bottom of the table. Now, it has to be said that Stoke are trending downwards in the Championship. You look at their last 4 or so seasons, season upon season, they're finishing lower every time. I think once again, there probably will be a fairly decent turnover of that squad as well. I think they are crying out to strengthen a few positions at the moment. One thing that I can't get my head out of at the moment as well is that, don't get me wrong, I really rate Mark Robins as a manager, but traditionally he always tends to start campaigns quite slowly, doesn't he? And Stoke have a tendency to bin off managers if they don't start the season too well. Could we end up in a similar situation to last season where Stoke start the season slowly, sack Mark Robins, and then just go on a managerial merry-go-round for the rest of the campaign? I don't know, tough one to call with Stoke. They could definitely go one of two ways next season. But there you guys have it. That will now wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to drop a like, and any more unpopular or bold predictions that you've got for this upcoming Championship campaign, get them down below. But other than that though guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.